in a corner. I love that. Let's talk about Dirty Dancing. Come on, great movie. We're all
So
fans.
it's on my mind because we're going to get comments in the feed from this. It's on my mind because today I got a thing. My wife and I have like season tickets, like theater tickets, and there's some kind of live show. I don't know if you heard about this, but they show the movie in the theater, but then they also have like live musicians and like people come and dance on stage and stuff. I think.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm really hoping to not have to go to that.
Well, if it's
dirty,
Star
like
Wars,
a Dirty
it's kinda
Dancing
cool.
like thing.
Star Wars would be rad. I would
Yeah.
go to that. Or
I guess-
Indiana Jones, that'd be cool.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of.
Boom.
Yeah. On that note, let's start the show.
Hi, nerds.
Hi, nerds.
How are
Should
you
we
guys?
fake the intro music again? Do 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 do. What time?
is it? Yeah. Anyway, hey guys.
That's it, and we're done.
How are
Yeah,
you guys
we're
doing?
done. I'm fantastic. Gabe, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm really great. I'm
Really?
excited about I'm excited about Jason being here.
I know
was
because he's a nerd. He's like a guitar. Like we're gonna
I
get
know
into
this is gonna be maximum
Like
level nerd. I was talking to him backstage because Jay was late. For everybody in the comments, Jay was late. And I was telling
I was
him
late.
about how on our last shoot, when like you were heading to the airport, you handed me your most recent copy of Fretboard Journal, and you're like, "Here, have you read this?" And I was like, "Oh no, I haven't gotten that one yet." And you're like, "Cool, I don't want to take it on the plane. I already read it all on the way here." And so I got a free copy out of you. It was exciting.
Yeah, I am a big fan of reusing or repurposing magazines. Like when
Me
I'm
too.
done, I don't. My wife has this collection of Vogue magazines. That's like she's got like decades and like 30 years of Vogue magazines. It's like a
30.
big collection.
Wow.
I don't have 30 years. I don't have 51, 52 issues.
There's 51 now, yeah, and a couple of electric only issues, yeah.
Okay, so I don't have all of those issues. So I figured if I don't have them, I should read them and pass them on to somebody.
Sure.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
That's fair.
Jason gave it to me when we were in New York, Mike, all together. But I'm not going to tell you why we were in New York all together. But we were.
It was to see me.
Well, that's
Yes,
we didn't really see you though. That was the
No.
deal.
we sort of. Well, I saw you.
You saw we saw and then you saw Jason because we went to pizza
Yes,
accidentally at
we
the same
just had
place.
pizza. We had vegan pizza.
I
That
had
was
vegan
cool.
pizza. He had vegan pizza. You had
I did not have vegan pizza.
you had non-vegan pizza.
I had non-vegan pizza.
Okay.
Let's
Well,
get
anyway,
pizza.
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Taylor Primetime. We're back. We are back. We made and we did not have a show last week. Apologies. Why did we not have a show?
Because you were in LA.
I was unavailable. You
You
were
were
unavailable.
unavailable. You were unavailable.
I was.
You
so
were
much.
unavailable.
Been,
And you were unavailable.
it would have been just me and Roger. And while Roger does command an audience, it would have been like a very short episode with very little conversation involved.
That's
So,
a prime time that I would watch, though, just like Mike and Roger doing.
Yeah, I would watch that too. That would be exciting. Welcome,
well, there he is.
ladies and gentlemen. We are going to get nerdy with Jason.
So
Wait a
nerdy. I
second.
can't wait.
Mike,
Yeah.
is this the time we bring up? This is the time we bring up. It's so nice to have Jason Verlander on the show. Justin's
Right.
brother.
I want to talk to him about his cousin.
Oh, it's his cousin. I thought it was
Yeah.
Justin was his cousin. He pitches for the Mets.
Yeah. And used to be on the Tigers and the Astros. Is this
Wrong,
Did we
Jason.
have this wrong? We had
You
this.
guys-
We had the wrong info.
You have it all wrong. I don't even think I'm as nerdy as you guys think I am. So we'll see where this goes.
Really? You're kind of nerdy. Well, you know
I
what?
guess I am.
We'll get there in a minute. I got some questions for you on this one. But Jason, welcome to the show. We are so stoked to have you. Co-founder
inviting
of Fretboard Journal, Jason Verlinde. Is that how we
Yes.
pronounce it?
Yep.
That is how we pronounce it. Jason, how are you doing? Welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you here.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm here in Seattle, Washington. It's actually kind of nice out. It's supposed to be 90 degrees this weekend. Things are good.
What?
Wow.
With sun or 90
Yeah, with
and
actually sun. Yeah.
90 and rainy would be appropriate.
I was
That-
I was just in Seattle not long ago.
Yeah.
Like
Where are you doing?
in March, I was in Seattle.
Oh, PRT.
Yeah, I went to Pacific Rim Tonewoods.
That is right.
I was in and around that area quite a bit.
Nice.
That is right. Jason, so for you, you might be new to the show a little bit. I don't know if you caught up on how this works. We have some segments throughout the way. We talk to my mom a lot because she's an avid fan of the show. We used to do, we do a segment when we get hate called Hug Your Haters. That's where we go in and we just show them a little love. But
Okay.
the only hate we get these days is from my mom when we don't have a show.
Okay.
And I got a text yesterday that was like, we're having a show tomorrow, right? With like, it was like, disappointed eyes you get from your parents, from your mom, right? I got that via text. It was like, so I decided we should have a show. I said, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I believe I said. Mike, how you doing?
Not too shabby. Glad to be back on the prime times. It's been a few weeks.
Master of Chaos. So this is new, this little thing we get to add.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, yeah, my real title comes out.
Master of Chaos. Wow.
So good.
What is Roger's title?
The assistant master of chaos, of course.
That's so awesome.
Well, the chaos creator, one of the two. Yeah.
That's
What
so
is
good.
what would you give Gabe? What would you call Roger? What would you give a title? If you gave a title to Roger, what would it be?
Oh man, that's hard to say. I feel like it would have to do with his like squeaky little bark in the background, Sir Squeaks a lot, or something like that, or like or something to do with when he goes to town on a toy on the show, because that's very enjoyable for me.
True.
Jason,
Like when Mike's trying to talk about something and Roger's just absolutely trying to behead a toy, it's kind of great.
Yeah, to be honest, we half the time people just get involved and they love Roger so much that I often just I'll solo Mike like this and we'll be talking, but it'll be Roger.
Okay. Takes the heat off me. I love it.
Takes the heat off you. All right, guys, let's get into this nerdy show. You guys know how this works. It's a guitar nerd talk show. We talk a lot.
It's a talk show. We're here to talk.
We talk a lot, and this one's going to be especially nerdy to find out why Jason's not that much of a nerd, which he's not. He's a journalist. Which is
it the denerdification show?
The denerdification show. Yeah. I'm wearing an Atlanta Braves hat because it's Jason's favorite baseball team. I don't know if that's true either. I did a lot of research here. I'm just kidding. You guys know how this goes. Let's keep the feed clean. Nothing derogatory or out of line. We don't want to have to put you into timeout. Hey, Gabe will put you in timeout. We have a segment. We have a segment up front that I would like to play a useless clip for, but that we keep saying this, Gabe. We need to update these useless clips.
We do. I've been doing other stuff.
Oh, I'm busy. Next thing you're going to sound like Mike. I'm busy.
I've been busy, but what I've been mostly doing is curating my collection of Guitar Shop t-shirts. Tonight's show is brought to you by my friends at Ernie Williamson Music.
I love it. That's fantastic.
They don't know that, but they sent me a shirt a while back.
We are going to do a segment now called What Are You Listening To? Jason, it's super simple. What have you been listening to lately?
Oh, God.
He doesn't know.
He's like, this is put on the spot. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts because all we keep doing is putting out podcast after podcast. So I've just been editing constantly.
Really? No music, just podcasts, just words and people talking.
A lot of words and people talking right now. I've been listening to a forthcoming record from a friend of Taylor Guitars, Ben Harper. I just interviewed Ben right before NAMM. And it's a fantastic record coming out this summer that features a Taylor pretty prominently throughout. Yeah. So that has been on my list, but unfortunately for most people, you can't hear that yet.
Ben's record is, I got a little peeky sneaky. Ben is just he was on the show, actually. He was on the show in the middle of this pandemic thing we talked about for the last couple of years.
I just subscribed to your podcast. I'm subscribing to all of them now.
There's several. Take your time.
That's so awesome.
I listen to podcasts a lot. When I travel, I typically will listen to podcasts like if I'm driving somewhere. just depends where the shoot is that I'm going to. So when I'm going to like Nashville or New York or Philly, or I haven't really filmed anywhere else close for a while, Detroit maybe, or down south or something like that, I'll listen to podcasts in the car. So
Love it.
yeah, podcasts are kind of my jam. So now
So
I've got new ones.
So is that what you've been listening to, or what have you been listening to musically? Maybe.
Me?
Yeah, podcasts.
Well, yeah, a lot of podcasts. No, listening to this. I'm just gonna go on like this week
Primetime
or
episodes.
So. I've been listening to almost exclusively the new Josh Ritter record.
All right, I forgot.
It's really good, and my kids have kind of taken a liking to it.
Yeah, it's scary. I'm gonna back you up on that. You never stop talking about Josh Ritter.
I know,
and
I
like Josh Ritter, but you got me a record once for my birthday. You
sent
me a gift, and I went full in on Josh Ritter. It is a very good album.
Your last birthday gift is sitting upstairs on my counter. Sorry about that. It's from like a year ago.
Are you putting it to good use though? Like, is it a coaster? What's the deal?
It's a notebook. I told you what it said, didn't I?
Yeah.
The notebook.
Okay. So
right, it's a journal.
It's a journal. But yeah, the new Josh Ritter record is rad. I've been playing it in the car. I've got my kids hooked on it. My 4-year-old really likes the opening track, which is called Sawgrass. Mm-hmm. And that was her nap time music today, which was super cool. So yeah, she fell asleep listening to Josh Ritter today. It was rad.
That's amazing. Mike, what have you been listening to, dude?
Well, I finally got my I was on the
All
road
those
when
gold records behind you.
Yeah, I'm not listening to those. Well, actually I was listening to one of the bands earlier, but yeah, I finally got my record store day package delivered because I was away when it was happening. So a friend of mine hooked me up and pulled the records that I wanted beforehand. So I got I've been listening to In This Moment. It was their debut album that they've reissued on blue vinyl, and it's kind of awesome. Eric Carr, his Rockology double album, paying respect to probably the most talented drummer Kiss ever had, and also Van Halen Right Here Right Now, the live album from the early 90s with Sammy Hagar. And of all the Van Halen albums I've ever bought, that is definitely the most recent.
Really? I love it.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Before I go into mine, can we talk about bands that have original singers leave, and then there's a part-time singer that comes in for a couple of albums, and then the original singer comes back? Are you a fan of both eras? So we'll talk about Van Hagar versus.
No. I'm gonna be straight up.
You're not a Van Hagar.
I'm a David Lee Roth dyed in the wool maniac.
Is it because
I like 90s Van Halen? Like,
yeah, see,
Right Now,
5150 was
and all
amazing.
that stuff. Yeah.
Nope.
Jason, how do you feel about this vibe?
I'm not sure I have feelings. I might be on Mike's side though.
Really?
Just to balance the scale out here.
Interesting.
It's the innovation of those first, those albums when like Eddie Van Halen was the man and David Lee Roth was dancing all over the stage and they were raw. And then like the Red Rocker comes in and he's singing about tequila and, whatever, just come on.
Dog.
And singing way almost out of his range and straining too much. Not that David Lee Roth didn't, let's be honest. But David Lee Roth can do a scissor kick like nobody else.
Okay.
Fair. What about you, Jay? What are you listening to?
Well, that's a good question. So, the new Joy Coon record, I talk about her a lot. Her record is phenomenal. It is so good. Everybody should go get it. I mean, if you're a streamer, just go to the first record that's available. It's new. It'll usually say new. I think it came out a couple months ago. It's phenomenal. Last week in LA, we filmed an artist that I wasn't that aware of, and her name is Autumn Nicholas. Oh, also in that vein of Joy Coon, but has a big, just an insane story to tell. Last night we filmed a guy that I had known a little. His name's Josh Hislop. He's on Network Records. He's been there on the label for 12 years. It is what folk is folk music, acoustic singer-songwriter stuff is supposed to sound like. And it was so, to me, in my opinion, it was so great. But I just started diving into stuff last week. But I'm going to throw one out there that might be a guilty pleasure for some people. I might get some hate for this one, but I don't even care. I'm going to challenge everybody on this feed, in the feed and on the show here, to listen to the new Ed Sheeran record. It is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is just, it's heartfelt.
Ed Sheeran's brilliant, man.
Yeah, it was written about his wife who was going through cancer during a pregnancy. And it was like a love story to her, or a love letter to her. And it's gorgeous, man. It's just, he's talented. That's it. That's all I got. And he won his lawsuit. He didn't steal any.
I'm thrilled for that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, come on.
Same.
You know, there's 12 notes.
There's
right?
12 notes.
And there's only certain numbers of combination of those notes that actually work together to create songs. And if that were the case, the Ramones should be sued every way to Sunday by anybody who's ever written a song, because they only used 3 of them, and they're pretty much the same 3 all the time. They could sue themselves over and over and over again. So I'm kind of over all this, like, well, you stole my song, like 30 billion years after the fact. Like, come on.
Well, there are a whole bunch of great videos on, I don't know, YouTube and TikTok and all those places about like how there's basically the same 4 chords in like every pop song in the world. So like, I mean, that's just the way it is. Like,
you know, you use it in a certain way. It's like, it's the vibe it creates. I don't look at, you know, the Marvin Gaye tune and the Ed Sheeran tune as having the same vibe. It's the same chords, but that's unavoidable eventually. It's certainly not the same vibe. It's not like Sam Smith and Tom Petty, right? Was Sam Smith, was that the guy? I don't remember his name.
My favorite part, Jason, is when Mike goes
down a rabbit hole and gets
down a rabbit hole. Is so my favorite.
I just get angry at certain things and frustrated, and now I'm going to shut up.
I love it so much. I just I could just listen to Mike talk and rant for so long. It's like, and I'm a Jets fan. Whoa. Oh, it's so good. Oh,
I'm a
There's
Sharks
no need to be insulting.
No, I love it. I'm a Lions fan. Come on, man. You know, like
I'm a Browns fan.
And
that insults.
At least Jason's had a Super Bowl recently. You know,
being
in the
Browns
last
fan is its own insult.
It is, right? Okay. That being said, we have a new segment, something that I've wanted to do for quite a while here, and that is to show some of our newer content that we work so hard to make. And it's the best way to have an artist on this iteration of what this podcast may be later, where we are all in a studio and it's a little bit more high quality, if you will, and we have artists on camera with us in the room. But the only way we can do this now is to take some video work that maybe Gabe captured, or some of our other videographers and directors and editors, etc., and show you guys some artists content. So it's something I want to do right now. It's going to take about 3 minutes to go through this. But Gabe, I want to show some of the new Cat and Alex stuff that you worked on in Nashville. Awesome. It was filmed at the Bluebird. Can you set it up for us?
Yeah. We were lucky enough to, in November, I traveled down to the Bluebird Cafe to film a piece with them that was included in the last issue of Digital Wood and Steel, that I'm super proud of. If you haven't watched that, you should go watch it. It's really, really cool. And actually got to film Cat and Alex doing like in the round performance, which is a thing that nobody gets to do. Like, you don't get to go film those. And the Bluebird, typically, unless you're like doing something for the CMAs or something, they don't allow people to ever film in the Bluebird. So it's really, really rare. But we got a whole day in there just to film interviews and film artist performances, and they were brilliant. They're so cool, and they're so young, and they're so enthusiastic, and so absolutely like in love and committed with it to what they do. And it was just it was a great day. It's a great location. Filmed it with Matt Ryan, who's a great filmmaker in Nashville that we work with, and it was a lot of fun.
Will you set them up as a couple real quick? Tell us, you got more of their story. So where did they come from? Who are they? Are they married? Are they?
They're a married couple. They met, I believe she found she saw him on like Instagram and like slid into his DMs or something at the encouragement of a friend, and they met and played together in like a park, and like basically instantly became
music.
a duo and fell in love. And weren't they on Idol too? I think
something. I think at least maybe.
I don't follow any of those shows. I'm so sorry, but their story is really cool in that's how they met and that's how they connected musically. And the first song they played together was actually the Shallow from the Stars Born movie. And like they just played it together and like instantly gelled. And so they're a really cool duo. They perform extremely well together and they sound great together.
How about we watch one real quick? How's that? 2 minutes and 59 seconds. We'll call it 3 minutes. So at 20 minutes and 38 seconds of this show, we're going to play a video for 3 minutes. Jason, I'll tell you about this number in a minute. Timekeeping over here. Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Kat and Alex, and the song is called All I Want.
Pieces, you give your heart in pieces. It's hard to find when someone's lost your trust. Take your time. I know these things can take some time, but having your heart will never be enough. No, I want you Friday nights, Sunday mornings, and all blue skies and won't stop stormings. I miss you, texting, drunk phone calls. So I want it, I want it, I want it all. I know you're hurt, I know your heart's been broke, but I can love you like you've never known. Like God, you gotta let it fall, 'cause I want it, I want it, I want it all. Ooh, I want all of you. Like God, you gotta let it fall, 'cause I want it, I want it, I want it all. Prove it. No, I ain't afraid to prove it. That I'm only falling for you. And that smile, head over heels for that smile. There's nothing in this world I wouldn't do. Oh, yo quiero todas tus noches sin mañanas, tu cielo claro y las tormentas. A otro mundo quiero llevarte. Yo quiero, yo quiero, yo quiero amarte. Sé que tu corazón está roto, pero déjame entrar un poco. No temas, quiero ayudarte. Yo quiero, yo quiero, yo quiero amarte. I want all of you. But God, you gotta let it fall, 'cause I want it, I want it, I want it all. Friday nights, Sunday mornings, all blue skies and won't stop stormings. Miss you, text and drunk phone calls. I want it, I want it, I want it all.
Like, how rad are they?
Amazing.
They not a lot of people, I feel like, are studio quality live like that. And they just kind of, they really bring it. And that was at like, I don't know, 11 a.m. or something, or like 1 o'clock. It was like, not the greatest vocal time or something. Like they walked in and basically did that cold 30 minutes after they got there.
Yeah, that's wild.
Like there's something about people who can pick up, that's one guitar and two voices.
Okay, Gabe, the mix was fantastic. I know you mixed that thing,
Thank
but
you, sir.
will you tell me about that guitar just a little bit? How was it set up? And because I know you had trouble with it.
Well, that was an 8017E blacktop, and thank goodness for the expression system. Somebody who, I don't know if he's like a close friend or something, like some guitar tech they work with, had advised them that it should really be strung with 10s, and he plays with a relatively thin pick, and plays fairly hard, as you can tell. So that guitar had 10s on it, but thanks to some strategic miking and blending it with the ES2, it still sounds like a guitar. This is pretty bright. We're really fortunate on that trip because we had Tim Godwin and Lindsay was there also, because they're artist relations, and Lindsay took that guitar back to the Nashville Artist Showroom and completely reset it up. And that's one of the cool things I love about Taylor's is how easy they are to set up. So she put like actual proper strings on it, and he tunes low too. So that guitar was tuned, I think that was like a whole step down. I think it was
with 10s.
I can't remember if it was D or if it was tuned down to C, actually.
And a floppy pick.
Mm-hmm. and it I mean, there's no fret buzz, but I think she put 12s or 13s on it and did a neck angle reset, like took the neck off, reset the neck angle and everything right there in the Nashville showroom and handed it back to him. And it was like, dang, that's awesome. Like it was like a whole new guitar. It was really good. So, but yeah, super fun to record, really fun to mix. Great duo.
Good job, Gabe. That was
Jason, were you familiar with them before?
No, I was not.
You are now.
And I have to say, for a venue that you hear about from the minute you get into music, the Bluebird Cafe looks tiny.
It is.
It is.
It's extremely small. Everything in it is very old. It's the same carpet that's always been in there. Like,
it's incredible.
It's small. It's in a strip mall.
Yeah.
Like
it's like next to a dry cleaner. It's like, yeah.
They're building a high rise like next door that's like part of this whole, they're like, we don't really know what's going to happen.
Wow.
Like it's wild.
It's like the Cavern Club of Nashville.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
You hear about it. I mean, every great singer-songwriter has played through there and workshop songs and everything. Yeah, it's incredible.
Like, and Gabe did a little kind of like a editorial like mini doc on it, and it's pretty really cool. It's not the actual Bluebird documentary, but we did one for Wood and Steel that was it's really, really great. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get to know Jason real quick. All right, becoming a guitar nerd. All right, Jason. So I asked this question to everybody who's on the show who the feed hasn't met yet, and that's simple. Your name is Jason. Mm-hmm. Jason, what in the heck do you do?
I publish and edit a magazine called the Fretboard Journal, which looks like that. At least the most recent issue does. I also host and produce a bunch of podcasts, and we do events. Specifically, the Fretboard Summit in Chicago now is our annual big guitar nerd gathering. And I write about guitars and music and interview musicians and luthiers and folks like Bob Taylor and Andy Powers all day long.
I love it. It's so good. So
that's awesome.
What a job, right?
What a job.
like it's like
the pay stinks, but it's fun.
Well, yeah, the pay. I mean, we're not in this for the money.
No.
We
don't need to eat and stuff.
As long as I got my cable bill paid so I can watch baseball, I'm fine, right?
Sure. How lucky is it to get to do something like that, though, where you're just so focused on music and musicians and talking about instruments all the time?
It's fun. I started out as a music journalist and I wrote for weeklies and music magazines. And at some point, especially with like younger punk and indie bands, which is kind of what I was into, it was like, there's only so much you can talk about with a band that's only a few years old and, maybe has one or two records under their belt. But the minute you start talking about gear, people open up. They want to share what they've figured out. They want to share what they're looking for. They want to share the great guitar that got away. And that really opened a door for me, as a writer and journalist, just to be like, oh, we can nerd out on this stuff. And then that sort of eventually segued into the Fretboard Journal.
Before we dive deeper into you, Jason, well, we're going to do that right now, but I want to ask what we're going to bring back an old segment we used to do called useless questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask some useless questions. This is information that we're going to educate the folks over in the feed with, but really it doesn't matter. It's not going to add any value to their life, but it's a useless question. So the first one is, what's your favorite color?
That's a great question. I'll say blue.
Yeah, it's a good color, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Pancakes or waffles, and why?
Well, Jay, as you know, I'm vegan, so
Right.
neither of these are high on the rotation, really. But
Right.
I would
And
go
let's
pancakes.
vegan pancakes, though. I mean, if you find a good vegan pancake.
Yeah, if you can find one.
Okay. So before one of the other reasons I was late to the show is because I actually asked this question to somebody else, and they went on this long rant, and I kind of agree. So my mom always raised us that pancakes are just a vehicle for syrup.
Sure.
And so if you think about that, waffles collect the syrup. So the waffle actually might be a little bit more sophisticated than the pancake.
It
Okay.
is, unless you grew up like I did, where a waffle just meant something that came out of the freezer and right into the toaster, whereas a
Yeah.
pancake at least requires a little bit of work,
A little bit of work.
a little bit
Pancakes,
of love.
it is totally a toss-up for me. Okay, next one is, what is your opinion about pineapple on pizza?
Oof. I cannot say I am a fan of pineapple on pizza.
Yes.
Yeah, can't do it.
Gabe, what's your opinion?
I'm a fan. I'm a
It's 2-2
fan.
here. I'm a fan too. I'm a fan.
I like pineapple on pizza.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but
My-
you're from
my
Ohio.
opinion-
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, my
I'm-
opinion
Well-
of pineapple on pizza is that Gabe and Jay are wrong.
okay, that's
But
fair.
I live in Ohio. Well, I'm from here now. It's fair to say I'm from here. I grew up down south, and so
Oh, where they put mayonnaise and ketchup on hot dogs?
yes, absolutely, mayonnaise and ketchup on
Oh.
hot. But actually, my go-to hot dog is like ketchup and mustard and sweet relish. But I don't know. But pancakes for me, like I grew up with a mom who put like corn in pancakes, or we would always have like fruit in them, or like we do fruit on top of them all the time.
He's talking
Boo
about your...
hiss, John says. So good.
Okay. Next question. What is the best live show or concert you've ever been to?
Oof, that's a good question.
It's hard, right? Because then you think of the other four.
Yeah, there's been a bunch. I will say I moved up to Seattle from California in 1998, and I want to say in probably 1999,
That's quite an era.
the incredible punk band Fugazi played here. And Fugazi played
Nice.
a lot of great shows. Unfortunately, most folks, I mean, all the shows are actually recorded. You can go download them for $5, which is brilliant. Other bands should take note of lots of things that Fugazi has done over the years. But they played a show with the band The X from the Netherlands opening that was just, maybe it was just my mood, maybe it was them, but it was just like on a whole nother level where the band was tighter than I ever remembered. And it was a very loud show and a lot of energy, and I love that band. So
I got into a long discussion with Ian Mackay once. I worked at Southern Records, Southern Distribution, and we distributed Discord. Discord is the label that Ian from Fugazi owns and runs and operates, and he doesn't believe in marketing. And that argument turned into a long discussion about Public Enemy, and he is the most knowledgeable human on the planet about Public Enemy, the rap group from New York, as a matter of fact. Anyway, I love that. Fugazi is, I mean, if you had a chance, you're a lucky soul. Okay, who's the most famous person you've flown on a plane with?
Oof, that's a great question. When I was a child, I grew up in Sacramento, and we would go to Disneyland, you know, as one does when you're a child, every few years, whenever we could scrounge up enough money. And my mom swears that I sat next to Roger Miller on a PSA flight from Sacramento to whatever, Orange County, LAX, I don't know. So I'd say Roger Miller. Chug-a-lug,
Wow.
King of the Road, Roger Miller. Yeah.
That's pretty
That's
crazy.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Who knows? Maybe it was just a guy who looked like Roger Miller, but now that is part of my narrative, and I am sharing it here with all of you.
And that led you to becoming a journalist, which is, we're going to get there. This is the makeup. This is how it works.
How much of everyone's personal life story is their mom giving them incorrect information? That's
Could be a lot.
super
I think
formative.
I used to have when I first had for my first daughter, Lola, I had created a Twitter account called Kid Lies, and it was all the lies, the fibs we tell our kids, right?
Oh,
And my
perfect.
buddy had the best one I had ever heard. It made me laugh for a long time, and I tweeted it, and it was when the ice cream truck comes down the street and the music's on, it means it's out of ice cream.
Oh, wow.
That's great. That's sad, but
Anyway,
great.
That's
okay.
good. I love
Wow.
that one. I'm gonna steal that.
I love the airplane question. I thought I sat next to the inventor of the chip clip. I thought that was a big deal once. Okay, and then last useless question is, what is your favorite vegan snack, Jason?
Well, I think you know this one, Jay, because I think I gave you a bag or two when we had our top secret mission in New York. There is a vegan jerky called Pleather out of Ohio,
Pleather.
actually.
Yeah.
Made by a husband and wife. I don't know what they are, magicians. I don't know how they do it, because most
It's
vegan
so
jerky is
good.
pretty nasty, and this
Yeah.
stuff is a pretty good synthetic, whatever you want to call it, version of jerky. And so I've sung their praises. I wrote about them for a magazine that Third Mountain Records puts out called Maggot Brain. I've been their like informal marketing team. So
Pleather. It is.
Pleather. It's
And
good stuff.
and the flavor is like the one that you introduced to me was like this like pepper.
Yeah, it's just a salt and black pepper bomb that goes into your mouth, and yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Did you ever think, Mike, that we would talk about vegan treats so much on this show?
Sadly, I just don't have much to contribute.
Okay, that's fine.
okay.
All right, let's dive in for real. I got some real questions here. When did you become a guitar nerd, or in other words, a guitar nut? As I was doing a little bit of research, when did this all happen?
I mean, gosh, this is a good question. I collected instruments growing up, but they were mostly like the weird Tyscos you'd see at a garage sale or a flea market, like goofy things like that. I think it was probably when I moved up to Seattle. So in 1998, I moved up here to help Amazon, which at the time was just a bookstore, start selling CDs. Remember those CDs?
Yeah.
So they hired a bunch of people from record labels and music journalists, and we churned out a whole bunch of content and made a virtual record store, and the rest is kind of history. But I don't know, a year or two into that, I finally felt like I had a tiny enough salary that I could buy like a decent new Martin, I think, at the time. And then I started to go from there and upgrade. And it was around that time that I found myself kind of like spending more time on whatever websites and forums existed and reading the old Mandolin Brothers catalogs and Elderly Instruments catalog and
So right.
nerding out the way one does.
And you just went down a rabbit hole before YouTube. Back in the day before the YouTube, you would just
Yeah, I
went
mean,
down a rabbit hole.
Those catalogs were
Yeah.
like vital. You could learn so much about old instruments in particular from like whatever Stan Jay was hyping or whatever Stan Wordman was hyping at Elderly. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you've had this opportunity to meet some of the best luthiers on the planet, right? I mean,
Met a bunch of them.
and just, I mean, I've seen you around Bob and Andy, right? And you're just in it. It's like they are your people, right?
Guess so.
Well,
Don't give me a chisel, but somehow I can talk to these people. Yeah.
I know, and it's really fun to watch. I mean, I've witnessed it a couple of times, but most recently in New York, and it was really fun to see that. Along with co-founder Michael John Simmons,
Yep.
you started Fretboard Journal in 2005. What was your aha moment that was like, we want to start a magazine? Where did that come from?
Well,
Magazines are hard.
I'll give you the medium length version so as not to bore all of your followers. But, we were two bored writers in day jobs that we kind of were needing a distraction from. And I grew up in, like I said, punk culture and zine culture. And so we actually started this little ukulele zine called the Ukulele Occasional. It was like around 2000, 2001. And it lasted for all of 2 issues before, and I'm going to offend some ukulele fanatics who are watching this right now, but we got a little bored. We were like, is this it? Like, what are we going to do with this thing? We come out once a year. We both gravitated towards like the weird, esoteric, quirky histories of the instruments. So we weren't really into like interviewing ukulele clubs, regional, things like that. So we did that, and then I'm like, well, wait, we've been putting all this energy into just ukuleles. Why don't we feature other fretted instruments? There's the light bulb moment of like,
Right.
oh yeah, there's guitars and other things, narrow focus. Anyway, so we Michael actually, that year that we founded the Fretboard Journal, so 2005, he had just written the 30th at the time anniversary book for Taylor Guitars, like Taylor Guitars.
Yep.
30 years of an American. I'm going to screw it up. Somebody will correct me. I forget what it's actually.
Yeah, Mike, what's the book called?
New American Legend.
It's got 30 years in the title.
30 years. Yeah. So anyways,
Gabe, what's the title?
I have no idea.
You know more about
I can go grab it. I have
got
it
a
over
white
there.
cover.
I
Yeah,
absolutely have
guitars.
that. I have the book. I just can't tell you.
Yeah. Anyways, so 2005.
Somebody in the feed, tell us what the title is.
Thank you. Yes, please.
The
I feel shame. I feel much shame.
I know.
So 2005, Michael and I are starting to plot this magazine, and I'm really inspired by like what I'm seeing in surf magazines and other non-guitar magazines, because I am not feeling super inspired by guitar magazines and trying to replicate what's already out there. I'm like, I want to feature the culture. I want to do these long interviews with luthiers, photo essays. I want to get more behind the scenes. So Michael had just written that book. So the entire time we're, drawing out, mocking up like two kids, playing magazine, we're drawing up this magazine. I'm hearing all these stories about Bob and Kurt, what's going on behind the scenes at Taylor. And so, yeah, the Taylor stories just were flowing, and Bob and everything he's built up, and Kurt, have been a big part of the magazine ever since.
Tell us a story.
There you go. Thank you, Stan. Step 3.
Was that Evan's question? Was that Evan's question? What's the name of the book?
Question. Yeah. What's the name of the book?
Stan, you won.
Stan, send us an email. We'll send you a gift. That's
again,
right, Stan? Tell us about when you met Bob and Kurt.
Oh my gosh.
We'll get to Andy later. Do you remember this moment, or was it separate?
I don't know the time. I would see Kurt at the NAMM show, and I've been going to NAMM for now 20 something years. And so, Kurt's kind of a quiet behind the scenes guy. I didn't really necessarily talk a lot with him, but, Bob and I, in addition to the guitar nerd talk, have a love for the same vehicle, the Toyota Land Cruiser series of vehicles. And so at some point early on, if I remember correctly, Bob was telling me about the Land Cruiser that he had garaged over in Africa that was kind of waiting for him whenever he needed it to go on safari or go visit, a jungle.
Driving in Cameroon.
Yeah. And I'd be like, oh, I got this 1988 that I park in my driveway in Seattle, and so we just kind of nerded out on that. And I think we've bored many people at the NAMM show and other guitar gatherings, just talking about vehicles a lot. And then the craziest thing is I knew Andy pre-Taylor, because one of our dealers for the Fretboard Journal was this incredible guitar store called Buffalo Brothers, which was based in Carlsbad, California, and was a big Taylor dealer. One of their sales guys, Kevin Kinnear, who's like an amazing champion for great guitars, great things. He saw our magazine and called me up and started offering to do photographs for it and write for it. And he was one of the first people who's like, there's this kid who's building guitars out of his parents' garage, and you got to come down and meet him. His name's Andy Powers. And so years before Andy got the Taylor gig, I went down there and watched him restore somebody's Arch Chop guitar and hung out with him for the day. And he ended up writing a story for us on one of his guitar heroes, Lloyd Baggs, which Lloyd Baggs, pre-pickup guru, was actually building these pretty wild acoustic guitars, and Andy wanted to write about those. So yeah, the connections just kind of run deep.
Andy, when he writes, I get to see early drafts of his column for Wood and Steel.
Yeah,
they're so rad. The unedited versions that he'll send Jim Curlin are just if we could, I almost want director's cut stuff of Andy's, from the editor, right? And just let him talk.
Yeah.
Right. When you ask Andy a question, we were talking about that today, when you ask Andy a question and he almost warms up.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, boom, and then he hits you with this knowledge. He and Bob have that similarity. But yeah, Kurt is very he's a little low key, right? But
Yeah.
wow, he can drop some dimes. That guy is one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, Kurt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm always inspired by him. And when he'll come in with like the simplest, like he's a problem solver for sure. And he'll say a couple of things. You're just like, come on, man, this he's so rad. So that's interesting. So you just woke up one day and said, I'm gonna tell guitar stories or fretted instrument stories, or was it,
Well, we went to a NAMM show, I think in 2005 that year,
Yeah.
and that when that book came out, and we had this little 16-page prototype that we
Love it.
paid a bunch of money to print somewhere. I have one of them somewhere here, and we just took it around and went to brands and asked people like, "Does this seem like a good idea? Does this seem like a crazy idea?" And enough people said, "Oh, it's a good idea. I'll buy an ad in that," or I got a good idea for a story, that we were kind of off to the races. And that first issue came out in like November of 2005, and it's 2023. We're still at it.
Who were some of the early people you got to jump on, like based on that first issue? Like, did you grab any cool interviews at that first NAMM show or anything?
As a journalist, NAMM is not a great place to do anything interview-wise.
As a musician, it's not a great place to do anything either. But
Yeah.
I hate to be laughing right now, but that is the truth. It's not.
So loud.
It's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the reasons, we'll circle back to this later, that I'm starting my own guitar event in Chicago is just like, I want to take all the cool things from NAMM and eliminate all that other stuff. Like, people like talking to each other, people like hanging out, people like hearing music. Let's just get rid of all that other stuff and put it, anyways. Early on, I think because we were esoteric and a little like out there for a guitar magazine, we got a lot of cool stories from friends and friends of friends that were kind of goofy. The first issue, Nico Case, incredible singer-songwriter, interviewed her hero Charlie Leuven of the Leuven Brothers, who was still alive. And so we had that, and then a couple issues later, I interviewed Nico, because Nico had one of her big albums, and it was like, of course, you just can't be a writer for us. Like, we gotta celebrate your music. So there's been a whole bunch of those moments where we get musicians who see the magazine, nerd out on it just the way we do, and are like, oh my God, this is the guitar magazine that speaks to me. What can I do for you guys? Or, can I be in it? Or can I be on your podcast? So there's been a lot of that.
Yeah, that's it. That's kind of how it is for me. There are a lot of good magazines out there, right? There are good other guitar magazines. I'm a big fan of other guitar magazines as well, but Fretboard Journal is the one that speaks to me the most. And I think it's the way that you are able to deliver the writing is just phenomenal. It's not just a punchy article about a spec, right? It's well, like, which is
just like a love letter to the specs the manufacturers gave you. Like, we buy ads, so you have to write nice stories about our guitars. It's like, oh, here's this really interesting story behind this particular guitar from this artist from this era, and like the history of it. And like, that's the stuff that I nerd out about too.
Yeah, I mean, this is like why people, I think, those who do find the Fretboard Journal love it, is like they maybe feel like they've read everything there is to read in other guitar magazines, or that maybe everything is already online. We kind of stay in our lane, which is, we tell stories. We're not writing gear reviews. We're not telling you how to play a classic song. We're out there interviewing and photographing cool people doing interesting things. We're sort of like the NPR of guitar magazines, I guess, would be one way to put it.
Yeah.
And so if that speaks to you, it speaks to you. And, we have kind of this cult fan base. And then obviously tons of people could care less and read other bigger guitar magazines, or get all their content on YouTube or however else they're going to. And that's fine too.
I love it. I think it's one of the best. I also like the way that you represent yourselves online. I think it's really cool. I think the way that you do some excerpts from your website's great for me. Everything about it is fantastic.
What kind of inspires you to grab onto something and decide to write about it? Like, like as I was going through the last issue, you know, some of the stories that were in it, like I was just kind of wondering, like, okay, how do you get inspired to like
This
write
is this,
about
yeah,
that particular guitar, you know,
yeah.
like that kind of stuff?
We have a pretty great group of contributors, both photographers and writers, who are constantly flooding my inbox with great ideas. And one of the cool things about the magazine is, you know, all of our stories are meant to be evergreen. There's never anything that's topical or that will feel like old news if it comes out 3 months from now. So we're always squirreling away these great ideas and finally, you know, eventually telling our writers like, hey, now we're ready for that story, you know, about that builder you told us about last year. So it's kind of fun to just kind of program the magazine. Every cycle comes out 4 times a year, and it's never the same twice, you know. And a fair number of guitarists and guitar builders reach out to us, and they're telling us about, you know, what they're up to, and sometimes those stories, you know, like, you know, we heard the Ben Harper record, like I was saying earlier, and it was like, wow, this is a different Ben Harper record, and we love that guy, and he's written for us as well. He wrote about David Lindley for us many years ago.
David Lindley's great.
And so yeah, we have a in fun with it.
This is
That's
one,
really
exactly.
well put,
Oh,
Kevin.
This is
Thank
really
you.
well put.
Thank you, Kevin.
In issue 42, there, I believe it's issue 42, right? There's a really great article about Andy Powers.
Yeah, I did that.
You
remember
did
that? Yeah.
You remember that? You remember that issue?
A little bit. It's been a while. It's been a few years.
And issue 42 is also where you say what the meaning of life is. For those
really?
that read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Yeah, I was
Galaxy.
gonna say.
Meaning of life is 42. So,
Yeah.
But actually, I do have a question. You know,
This
considering
happened.
that you're, considering that, you know, you are a print zine, and that seems to be disappearing a lot.
Yeah.
You know, what are your thoughts on a lot of other publications going, you know, digital only, or lessening their distribution as a print magazine? For me personally, I like to hold the thing and read it and leaf through the pages, because that's what I grew up with. But I'd love to get your take on that.
It is not easy putting out print publication, as you guys know, with Wood and Still for sure, and the great work you've done there. It's very expensive. Paper costs and postage are brutal and getting worse and worse. But this style of magazine, which, you know, is thick and not filled with ads, it costs more. It's, you know, $20 to get a copy of the Fretboard Journal. Is actually growing. It's sort of like the vinyl resurgence that, you know, all these people buying 180 gram vinyl and sort of it becoming a statement piece. So there are a lot of magazines like ours that are called, you know, keepsake, quarterly, bookazine, whatever you want to call them, for a wide variety of topics. Like there's, you know, a tennis magazine called Racket that's kicking ass right now. There's Mountain Gazette for the outdoors world. There's the Adventure Journal for people who like to go hiking, the Surfers Journal and the Golfers Journal for folks who do that. And so we all kind of know each other, and we all kind of like share tips of like, oh, this printer is better than that printer, or have you looked into this mailer? Because, you know, our readers are complaining about dinged corners and stuff. So we're always kind of all in communication with each other. And I'd say as a whole, our segment of the media universe is actually growing. The magazines that have really struggled were the ones that, you know, really banked on advertising dollars, paying all the bills. And as we all know, advertising is now largely on social media, and everybody's putting all their budgets into that stuff. And so that's a harder racket, although Lord knows it's not easy to put out any kind of magazine in 2023. It's a ton of work.
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? And paper and paperweight and paper. And you have to, you know, did you just do you have a partnership with a good printer, or is it a long standing relationship, or do you shop around, or how does that work?
A little of both.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of always have to be looking at alternatives. You know, we have worked with our existing printer for many years and hope to continue to, but there's always some printer that might be able to do something a little more efficient. And, you know, the printing is actually just half the battle. The other half is getting it mailed and enveloped on time and distributed to all of your readers in our stores. And that's one of the, you know, this is the least sexy part of my job, is like figuring out postage bills and how to move magazines that weigh a pound each across the country, but it's actually a big part of my job, sadly.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's hard. You know what, David? I'm gonna throw this up there. We do too.
Yeah.
We understand that it was a hard decision to make for this year for us to trim back. Yeah, I've heard Andy say maybe, for this year, we're not going to print it. We're just going to print the gear guide. And a lot of that is also measuring and doing a little bit of research for ourselves to see how many interested parties are out there. For every, I'm not going to throw a number to this, but I might, I'm probably far off. But for every one person who misses it, probably there might be 10 who don't really care. And so we're trying to kind of measure that and figure out what we're doing with Wood and Steel. So we have created a digital magazine, and Wood and Steel, it's online, and that's what we got. But we all loved doing the issues of Wood and Steel. It took a lot of effort, as Jason can attest to. It's a lot of time and a lot of deadlines and a lot of back and forth and making sure things are right. And it is a lot of work. Yeah.
And a lot of it is really thankless. As great as the finished product is, when everybody gets to hold it and be proud of it, it's a lot of work behind the scenes to get anything out the door.
You had a question up here that was pretty good, Jason. For Jason, Rob, would you write an article about a Canadian luthier who does everything by hand?
Rob, you'll have to tell me who that is, and we'll have to suss out what they're doing. And yeah, maybe.
I love that. Hit him up.
I'm very easy to get a hold of. Jason at fretboardjournal.com. My inbox is filled with folks pitching me on stories or asking about the magazine. So reach out to me. Tell me if it's, a story usually requires a great writer and a great photographer for our magazine. And if those two things can come together and the story's there, sure.
And that is why we love Fretboard Journal. Gabe, go ahead.
As a giant video nerd, and I know you guys do some video content on your website, how has kind of that started to creep into what you do, like supporting articles with video content, or doing more exclusive stuff online too?
Yeah, so the evergreen stuff that we where we have original photography, we have long form stories, that pretty much exclusively lives in the print magazine. And then we do have a PDF edition that we sell for folks around the world, mostly because to ship a magazine globally, it's really it costs more than the issue of the magazine, the postage does. So we have readers around the world who get a PDF edition, and some of those people have end up converting into, they're like, hey, this was cool, but I really want to hold this thing. Like, I'm going to go back to paper, which is kind of fun and interesting. Videos, started with, I can tell you exactly when it started. My son is 12 years old. And when my wife was very pregnant, I enrolled myself in a documentary filmmaking boot camp. This is when DSLRs, like the Canon 5D and the 7D were just catching on. And everyone's like, you can shoot beautiful video with shallow depth of field. And this is amazing. So I flew to Maine, to the Maine Media Workshops, and took this documentary filmmaking class there, because I'm like, when else am I going to have 10 days off to do whatever the heck I want and not be, I knew dad mode was coming on pretty fast. So I go and I take this class and learn as much as one can in a week, and shoot an embarrassing, little sample video to graduate, I guess. Come back to Seattle, and from then on, whenever we go and interview artists, we generally have at least one or two video cameras hiding. Hey, while we have you here, do you mind if we just shoot a little video? And so, I got a killer version of Jackson Browne playing Something Fine at his Santa Monica studio a long time ago, with two rinky-dink Canon DSLRs and no tripod, balanced on two chairs, and a Zoom H4, the original recorder. That wasn't all that good. People love that. People are like, this is the best work you've ever done. I'm like, oh my God, that is with the worst gear I've ever used. But the timing was perfect.
You make do sometimes, though.
You make do. That's so funny.
Jay and I just talked about this recently, because I had some of our equipment didn't show up. Some rental equipment didn't show up on the shoot.
It did in the middle of the shoot.
It showed up in the middle of the shoot. And sometimes you just got to roll.
Yeah, sometimes that moment is just you gotta capture it, and that's what I did there. And I remember even being kind of late for my flight back to Seattle and like almost missing it. It was like me flying to LA and back for the day, like one of these crazy things that I would never do now as I'm older. But yeah, so we started doing that. We started filming, gently asking when we interview somebody on location, like, hey, do you want to do a song? Do you want to, we got the tripod here. Can we see some of your guitars? Posting that stuff on YouTube. And then now, for the last decade or so, when artists are coming through Seattle, we usually extend an invite to them, artists that we've featured, artists that we want to feature, and say, hey, we've got this space. Do you want to come in here and do a song or two? Tell us about your guitar. That's how we've cornered the market on solo Bill Frisell videos. Was Bill Frisell used to live in our neighborhood in Seattle in Ballard, and he would just come and hang out. And I would always say, hey, Bill, while you're here, do you want me to just hit record on this thing? And you sit in that corner. And so we have like 12 videos on YouTube that have definitely been our best performing things ever. An album's worth of solo Bill Frisell. Like, how cool is that?
Awesome.
And so video plays a role. We haven't really gamed the like YouTube algorithm system, because a lot of the stuff that we've put out is music that's licensed. And so the artists make that money. If you post a cover song, you don't really get ad revenue or anything. So it's kind of free marketing for us. People see our logo, go like, hey, these guys got Bill Frisell there. Let me check out this magazine. But, we're not professional YouTubers the way a lot of guitarists are these days. It's really just kind of an adjunct thing we do to kind of share cool stuff.
It's really interesting though that they have those videos have this like raw, really fun, kind of just natural, authentic feel to them. And as marketers, we sit here all the time, especially at Taylor inside of these doors. I had a long conversation with our, our whole marketing team recently, and we were talking about how we have to become a little bit more comfortable with being less polished. And that's just the way the world is going. You see people doing like, Gabe and I hate this, right? Where you see like vertical shot commercials on TV, and you're like, oh, come on, man, just turn your phone to the side, like wide format, or like little things like that. But those were those videos, man. It's just, you pop the camera on and kind of, Gabe did that with Jason Mraz and Andy Powers at NAMM one year. It was kind of like, hey, do you want to come in here? We're just jamming kind of. And he, no equipment, loud. He kind of threw some mics together, and we're like, let's try. It's some of the best content we've ever made together. And it was like single camera. It just works. It's great.
I had my Blackmagic cinema camera, but then I also had a DSLR that I had to take photos for a whole other job that was after I was filming like just recap videos of like what was going on at NAMM, and Mraz showed up to say hi to Andy. And I was texting Jay, who was on another location, and was like, yo, Jason Mraz just showed up. And so Jay was texting somebody else at Taylor like, hey, can you ask Jason if he'll come over here and film a segment or something with Andy maybe? And I feel like, I can't remember. I think that person like was kind of scared to ask. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm not scared. I'll ask.
Yeah.
And Andy kind of went, well, we can just do it right here. Right. And I was wildly underprepared. I actually happened to have two microphones like on
like
me.
in your pocket.
They were like in my bag.
Yeah.
Because like for a whole other purpose.
Because you're Gabe and you're like,
I just always have small diaphragm condensers in my bag. And I borrowed like mic stands and mic cables from another video crew and like set up in 5 seconds and was like, all right, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
That's the best content, man.
The noisiest
it's the best
place
content
in the world.
Before we get to, I want to move on to a storytelling segment. It's great. I want to show you this, but this is a great question, Jason. Are there any bucket lists you would like to interview?
Question. I mean, I've never an artist
listers
that we have featured, but I did not personally do the interview. But somebody who, that first record had a profound impact on me was Leo Kottke, that 6 and 12 string guitar record with the armadillo. I played that thing to death, and that was kind of one of the first, I mentioned Fugazi. That was one of the first like acoustic records where I went down that rabbit hole and sort of opened up other doors. So I'd say Leo Kottke. We haven't done a Mark Knopfler feature yet, but
Mark Knopfler.
Fingers crossed for 2023. Yeah, I don't know. There's a whole bunch.
Toto.
Maybe.
Ace
You know,
of Base.
When it comes to artists like that, my knee-jerk reaction is kind of like, they're not Fretboard Journal. But then if I want to get into problem-solving mode, I'm like, no, what is the Fretboard Journal Toto story? Like what is the angle? Because like great magazines like Mojo will document just like 6 months of an artist's life in the 70s or something, and do these like incredible introspective portraits. And I'm like, maybe that's our angle. I don't know.
Ben Harper is the most Fretboard Journal dude I've ever met.
I think he is. I think he is as well.
We have a story very similar. It was one of those really authentic moments. We were filming him in his, in the guitar shop there, and his mom was kind of in the corner, and it was just great. And at one point, he was trying to explain something. You know what? In one of these episodes of Primetime, I'll pull this clip because it's so good. And at one point, he's answering a question, and he goes, "Well." And he's very Ben, and he's thoughtful, right? You know this.
I do.
And he goes, "Well, I could just play something." And you're like, "Oh, Ben Harper's about to play something." And it was like 19 takes later. It was the one that he liked, but he's also very particular when he records. But it was just phenomenal. Okay, so I want to pitch a story. I don't know if you've ever done have you ever done a story on Steve Poltz?
Well, we've done one of our most amazing podcasts with him that went on for like 2 hours. But,
it would have to be.
No, I mean, we need to get him in the magazine. That is for sure.
Okay, so I want to show this, and this is on YouTube. We have this on YouTube. So if you haven't seen this, I'm sorry, or if you've already seen this, I'm sorry.
Do you want to tell the story behind this?
Yeah. So
we were at Americana Fest. This is 2019.
What was it? 2000 what?
19
Americana Fest, and
we set up in a hotel room.
Well, I got to tell you why we set up in a hotel room. So we don't get budget to do this stuff. I don't have budgets, right? And we had to pitch. We pitched going to Americana Fest for so long, and we had to get everybody on board. So this thing that I promised my boss at the time was like, I got this idea. If we set up in a hotel suite like we do at NAMM, we can convert this thing, and we can have like 1 billion and 2 artists come in there. Like literally, it was like, can you schedule 20 or 30 artists to come through and create all this content?
It was like 28 artists in 3 days.
And Gabe and I had this idea. We're like, well, we could also have him do other pieces of content. So I think we walked away. I think in the final count at one point, Gabe was like 54 pieces of content or something.
Gosh,
it's a lot.
It was a wild little
we were
thing.
You were just kind of, you get people talking and kind of just ask them a question or, what's your Taylor story or whatever.
Right. So I said to Poltz, because Tim
he's
Godwin,
a wild
our director of artist relations, I
love this. I love Steve Poltz.
Can you get Poltz here? And he's like, yeah, I can ask. Yes, no problem.
We still chat on Instagram.
I can get Poltz here. And we're like, and so he comes in the room, and he's just this bolt of energy, He's like, I'm Steve Poltz. I'm crazy. I got this stuff, and I got this idea. You want to play a song? You want me to play a song? I'll play a song. So he plays a couple of songs, and then at the end, we say, hey, Steve, will you tell us your Taylor story? And he goes, you ready? I'm about to play this thing, ladies and gentlemen. It's about 4 minutes and 30 seconds long, and it might be the best thing you've ever seen in your life.
So this guitar, it's crazy. So its name is Smokey Joe, and I was playing at the NAMM convention, and Bob Taylor had me come out to Nashville like 17 or 18 years ago, and he said, okay, play 3 times a day in our booth. And then he said, pick any guitar you want off of the wall. So this guitar was sitting on the wall. It didn't have one scratch on it. It was brand new. And Taylor was just gonna start selling this thing called Tobacco Burst, right? And So I was playing all the guitars. I picked this one, and this one was kind of magic to me. And Bob goes, "Not that guitar. That's not a good one." I go, "What do you mean it's not a good one?" He said, "The woods don't match. It's just going to be taken back to the factory and torn apart for parts. It's not even going to be used again. I just want to use it for this because we're going to be doing orders for this guitar." And I looked at Bob Taylor and I said, "You're going to kill it?" And so it was like I was at the pound and a dog was going to get killed. And my heart just sank. And I said, "You can't kill this guitar. It's cool." And so he said, "Just play something different. I don't want you to play that one. But I have ODD along with my ADD," which is, you know what ADD is, but ODD is oppositional defiance disorder. And when somebody tells me not to do something, I do it. So I ignored his wishes and I played this guitar. And I played it every day at the NAMM show. I would not play another guitar because I'm stubborn. So I finished playing it. They clapped. It was a fun show. And afterwards, Bob Taylor says to me, "Here, I'm going to give you this guitar." And it was like getting this rescue pup. And I fell in love with it. On the inside, it said, "Factory Demonstration." And I asked the head luthier there, Tim Larank, to cut out stration, so it says Factory Demon. And I named it Smokey Joe. And I don't use a guitar pick, I only use my fingers. And somehow my fingers have worn through this guitar because I am not easy on a guitar. One time a forklift went through the back of it here, and I would hold a CD in the back and go, "Oh, I have CDs for sale." It's been duct taped together so many times, and when I bring it into Taylor, they just all crowd around and go, "Poor Smokey Joe, what's happened to it this time?" And so recently I got that new guitar, and it's the 717 Honeyburst, and it's a beautiful guitar. And I was trying to avoid getting another guitar. Taylor Guitars were like, "We want to give you another guitar." I was like, "No, I do not want another guitar. Don't give me anything. I only need one guitar." And they said, "We want to give you another guitar." I said, "No. All I want is one key to my house, and that's it, and one guitar." And so when I would go in, I would duck going into Tim Godwin's office because I knew it would be like going to the principal's office, and I'd be yelled at for not playing a newer guitar by Taylor. And so the last time I was in there, they said, "Excuse me, Tim Godwin needs to see you in the office." And I was like, dang it. So I went in the office, and it was like getting called in the principal, and he said, "Play this guitar." And it was the Honeyburst 717. And that guitar was so beautiful, I fell in love with it. And he said, "What do you think? You want it?" I said, "If you can make it like Smokey Joe, take the peg that was here, put it here, and give me those good strings that I like to use, how they know the strings I like to use, and set it up because I like really thick strings. Make the action how I like it." And they did. So now I'm traveling with two guitars. And the crazy thing is Smokey Joe was looking for a friend. And now they travel together. Smokey Joe's not jealous. They sleep next to each other in the bed because I believe they become people and they love each other. And the way their bodies fit side by side, they spoon. And I haven't named the new guitar yet because I'm just going to let it come to me in a fit of inspiration. But I'm telling you, this guitar is not jealous. It actually likes the rest. It doesn't have to be tuned down to C or D, A, D, F sharp, A, D, or whatever weird tuning I fall in love with that day. E, A, C sharp, E, A, C sharp, sometimes C, G, C, G, C, G, just for the heck of it. You know what I mean? Take it down low. So I have these two different guitars I travel with now, and I love them, and these are all I play.
I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I am winded watching that.
You can hear our honest, like, absolute real-time reaction.
Yeah.
That was the wildest, like, 4 minutes of my life, maybe.
And he had everybody. How many people were in the room? There was like 15 of us in the room,
yeah.
not working. I mean, there were just people watching that, mouth breathing at, like, is he going to breathe? Is he going to breathe?
That is what we called hypercaffeination.
That guy right there is by far one of the best. He needs to be in the magazine. That was my pitch to you. That was my.
He also needs to just do like a spoken word album.
Right.
The music is great. Don't get me wrong.
Record that record.
Yeah.
I know. This brings us to a really great spot to segue into the Fretboard Summit.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to us about the Fretboard Summit. This year it's in August in Chicago at Old Town School of Folk Music.
Its new permanent home is Chicago's Old Town School of Folk Music, which is this kind of venerable institution, music school, and performance venue in Chicago.
Where Tony Policastro used to work.
Where Tony Policastro, who was at and will be at this year's as well.
Yeah.
He actually did a great YouTube video on it that came out last August when we did. But yeah, August 24th to 26th. At the Old Town School, fretboardsummit.org. Basically, this is me being a kid in a candy store saying like, well, I love guitar festivals and gatherings, but I want to make the best one ever that speaks to me as a human being. And so, you know, there are vintage instruments shows, there are lutherie-based shows, there are music festivals and music camps. And I kind of cherry pick the best elements of each and kind of throw them together. So it's sort of a fun house for guitarists where you can go from room to room and you can learn bluegrass from Jake Eddy or Tony Policastro in one room. And then you can go learn about vintage acoustics in another room. You can go try out vintage amps. You can go, I mean, we have all sorts of crazy programming that's really near and dear to my heart that I hope the world embraces. So like Josh Scott of JHS Pedals is
he's
playing Alton Brown this year. He's going to host our spoof of the Iron Chef cooking competition. It's called the Germanium Chef, and it'll be two pedal builders with a pantry full of ingredients trying to build the best fuzz pedal they can in an hour. And it's Robert Keeley competing against his former employee, Heather Brown. Should be amazing. We'll see what happens. I think heckling and cheating is welcomed. Bill Frisell is going to lead a guitar orchestra that anyone can join in on, no matter what your ability.
You told me about this.
We haven't even figured out the acoustic or electric thing. I guess I should figure that part out. But yeah, anyone is welcome to join, and then you're going to go home with an MP3 of the time you played with Bill Frisell. And I tossed this idea at Bill, and I'm like ready to hide from like him like throwing something at me, and he was like, "Oh no, that sounds great. That sounds fun." And so I'm like, "Okay, Bill, if you want to do this, you want to do this." I believe Bob, I just texted with Bob like a week ago. I think Bob and maybe Andy are going to be at this. And it's a great way to kind of meet the people behind the brands, go window shopping, maybe buy a guitar or two. But also, if you don't want to buy a guitar or two and you just want to geek out and hang out, it's a great opportunity to learn about the craft of guitar making or how to write songs or how to microphone your recordings better. Like we have literally dozens of hours of workshops over the course of 3 days. And it kind of goes from 10 a.m. till like midnight every day. And you can bow in and bow out as you like, but there's plenty of programming, that's for sure.
So, wow.
Yeah,
you can leave and go get food right there. There's a couple of really great restaurants like
there is a great, I mean, this, I'll be honest, before this trip last year, my perception of Chicago was like the Wilco album cover, the Sears Tower, and maybe old Webster episodes. Like I didn't really have a frame of reference for what Chicago was all about. And the neighborhood that Old Town is in is this really cute neighborhood. It's a little bit north of the city. So you can, even if folks who drove there, you can park your car and it'll be safe. And there's a dozen restaurants and cafes and wine bars you can go into if you need to. You can also just hang out at Old Town the whole time. So whatever you want.
If you haven't been to Old Town School of Folk Music, it's really great. If you are a guitar nerd and you are in Chicago, find it and go there. What dates are the summit again?
It's the 24th to the 26th of August, and our big headliners for this year. There's a ton of great musicians coming, but the big headliners are Jorma Kaukonen, Tommy Emmanuel, and then we got Jeff Parker, formerly of the band Tortoise, local Chicago legend performing. And then, like I said, Bill Frisell is going to be there. Tony Policastro. I mean, pretty much every great guitar maker that's in the Bob Taylor sphere, or friends of Bob Taylor and Andy Powers are going to be there. And we have like 50 great guitar builders from around the world coming to this thing. It's
a good idea. We should travel with Bob and Andy and do a live podcast with Bob and Andy.
You should.
I love Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago's great.
And there's Gabriel's pitch to go.
Just
That's
saying,
so
Jay,
good.
I love Chicago.
No, we got a couple of questions here in the feed for you.
Sure.
Jason Verlander, if your brother wasn't a baseball player, what would you be? I'm just kidding. Jason, if you weren't doing a magazine, what do you think you'd be doing? Would you be in journalism?
That's a tricky question. What is journalism these days? I'd
I
probably
know.
be writing of something. I don't know what. As is clear from anyone who reads the Fretboard Journal, I tend to gravitate towards these sort of like crafty individuals who are doing interesting, creative things. So maybe I'd be writing about, people who make, I don't know, boots or rockets or something else. I don't know, Land Cruisers. But yeah, right now, guitars. That's all it is.
I
saw
like
one
this
down
one.
here.
This is great.
Jason, what's your favorite guitar?
Oof, that is a tricky question. There is a Taylor GTE right behind me over here that I love a lot. And it actually, and I'm not just saying this because this is the Taylor show, I play that guitar more than I play any other guitar that I own because
I have one right there.
yeah,
The Taylor
it's
GTE.
always, except for right now, it's always out of the case, which makes it easy to grab and play. And it smells pretty good too. I like the smell of that Urban Ash. So
I love that guitar. I love the shape. I love the shape. I love the geometry. We did a whole podcast with Bob and Andy about the geometry of that guitar. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I don't plug it in, but just because I don't plug in really that guitar or any acoustic, but I love that guitar. At the Fretboard Journal office, I have a beautiful 50s Harmony Stratotone that came through an individual, Duncan Price, who was at the last Fretboard Summit and will be at this Fretboard Summit. And it is just a little mongrel of a guitar, no finish, second pickup added. I love that instrument. I have an old Gibson LOO that I love a lot.
Those are fun.
There are many guitars. I'm not going to lie.
That's rad.
How big is your guitar collection at this point?
I mean, it's nothing like most of the people we interview. It's probably a dozen-ish pieces, and then several that kind of come through the office and then get returned back to whoever lent them to us.
I love that,
a brand
that you mentioned Tiescos or Tyscos or whatever you want to call it. I have one right over there that Jay's obsessed with.
I love that guitar so much.
It's got 4 pickups on it. And it's got the like light switches.
Yeah,
on the
so
top.
perfect.
So
Those are cool.
It's like when you run a business and you need to have a vehicle that you can transport stuff with, and you buy a Porsche. You know what I mean? Like that guitar is so unneeded ever. There's nothing about, but I look at it and I'm like, I can see the need for that one. Let me ask you, let me go back. You said something, you don't plug it in because you just don't, right? But is it because you don't have anything to plug into?
No.
You see what I did there, guys?
That's a whole perfect segue, unasked for, but thank you. One of the things we do is a podcast called The Truth About Vintage Amps, and it's the best podcast. This is a fan favorite. This is probably the most listened to podcast at certain guitar factories and workshops and workbenches. It's like car talk for tube amps.
I love car talk,
and this sounds really, and it is really, really nerdy. I'm not going to lie.
It is.
I'd say about
so
half
nerdy.
of our audience don't even own an amp, let alone know how to solder. They tune in because my co-host, who's an amazing, like one of these legendary guitar amp techs who is kind of a curmudgeon, but kind of lovable. His name's Skip Simmons. I've known him forever.
Oh, such a good podcast.
Food recipes are shared, life hacks. We keep telling people to call in with asking for relationship advice. Nobody ever does. I don't think any of our listeners are in a relationship, but maybe we'll work on that. But yeah, people call in with questions about their tube amps and why they're not working or what they should do with them. And half the time, Skip's advice is just like, don't touch that thing. You are not qualified. Step away from the workbench. The other half of the time, he gives them constructive feedback, and people love that show. We just put out our 114th episode, and through that show, people have been sending me amps, like not like Dumbles or anything, but people are like, I thought you'd like this, and so suddenly I have this big amp collection, which I honestly didn't need, but I'm fine. It's fun.
Do you have a favorite?
Do you have a favorite amp?
Collection?
Well, I mean, honestly, there's a car sportsman at the Fretboard Journal that we've had for a decade. That
It's a
is
good question.
where every all those Bill Frisell videos I mentioned, like 90% of the shoots we do at the office have been through that car sportsman. It's just a great workhorse of an amp. I do have a Martin branded DeArmond here that is like super rare. That again,
Oh,
somebody
cool.
hipped me to a buy it now on eBay. You know, they're like, you should have this, Jason. And it was like, oh God, here we go again. But it found its way home, like
I
Steve
love
Pulse
those
in that guitar.
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love those friends.
Yeah.
There's another filmmaker Jay works with a lot who I'll text with gear about sometimes. Chris Sorensen, who like one day was like, oh, you know, here's this vintage Canon lens, you know, like it's like, oh
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could go down a real rabbit hole with some of those things.
You can.
Dear.
The Fretboard Journal office in Seattle recently got a new neighbor about 2 weeks ago, a film store. Like they sell film for film cameras and they do developing.
wow.
And it was just kind of this funny thing of like, wow, those are our new neighbors. I guess I'm going to dust off the film camera and start taking more pics.
It's really interesting. We briefly touched on this. I'm not going to get into the subject line or the subject matter or what we're marketing, but as a brand, we were talking about this before we hopped on about the debate we were having about being authentic, and some people try so hard as marketers to like, excuse me, make things look 35 millimeter.
Of course.
And so I'm in a meeting with our group, and I said, well, then why don't we just shoot 35 millimeter? And it was this moment of film. And so we did with some stuff that's coming up, and it's really, really great. You got a question here. Have you ever interviewed Bill Collings, RIP, was a good friend of Bob's? That is true. One of Bob's best friends.
Yes, we interviewed Bill several times. Bill was in the Fretboard Journal. I think when he passed away, I think we put that story on our fretboardjournal.com website. We also did at least 2 podcasts with Bill that were equally hilarious and brilliant. And Bill attended the first Fretboard Summit we threw back in 2015, and then I think got too sick to go to the second one. But yeah, Bill was inspiring on so many levels, and it's kind of the perfect Fretboard Journal story because he's kind of was super passionate, not only about guitars, but about hot rods and everything he touched, and just a great interview. Yeah.
Yeah. Bob spoke at his funeral. Bob, that was a very meaningful relationship to Bob. And one of the things that he used to say about Bill was, you know, we did a piece of content early on in the pandemic because everybody was like, what is going on? And I've said this Bob Taylor quote a couple of times on the show, and that was, only guitar makers know what guitar makers do. And that's a Bob Taylor quote, right? And he done, a lot of people don't realize, and again, forgive me if you're new to the show, or if you're a fan and you have been here, you've heard me say this before, I apologize, but he has often said, you know, I learned a lot from Jean Lervet. I'm very close to Chris Martin. And he starts dropping all of these like luthiers and these builders, and it's like Andy. Lloyd Baggs is like, Lloyd Baggs is a dear friend and mentor and everything to Andy, and it's really interesting. But Bill Collings, he used to say, Bill Collings could do things with guitars that no other builder could do, and I never knew how he did it, but he was the best.
Yeah,
that was a quote, and it was like, you're like, you're Bob Taylor, man. You're pretty good yourself. You know, you're pretty good yourself, Andy. You're pretty good. You're pretty all right guy. But there were certain relationships that Bob had that were just so very special, which I do want to actually nod and segue to Gordon Lightfoot passed away, and he was also a very dear. Bob had a very interesting relationship with Gordon, and he told the story about when they met the first time, they were both extremely nervous, right? And this was the moment Bob ended this with, this is the moment I knew I wasn't cut out for artist relations. But rest in peace, Gordon Lightfoot.
I should have you know what I should have done in preparation for this, that if I wish I had thought it through. is I should have gotten my extremely nerdy. I have a 79 Taylor 510 that I should have gotten out to show you. It's my birth year guitar, which I've been in search of for a long time. And one of those friend situations you talked about earlier happened where somebody went, "Hey, did you see this on Facebook Marketplace? Somebody has your birth year 510 up." And I was like, "Oh man."
That's
one
so
of those
cool,
situations.
Though. Yeah.
Are there
great question, Phil.
non-professional musicians welcome at the summit?
Yeah, like I was saying about the Bill Frisell thing, like literally every ability, acoustic and electric, you can come to the summit. We had many spouses come last year who had a great time, even though they didn't really care about guitars, because there's kind of music, there's just music and fun stuff happening kind of around every corner. So yeah, I'd say 95% of the people attending, and we only have like 400 people attending because that's how big the venue is. Old Town's main theater is 420 seats, so it's a pretty intimate affair and folks spread out, but you can definitely find your people, and it is not meant at all to be intimidating. Whether or not you're a pro, whether or not you have a big guitar collection, we just want to make a fun place for people to kind of like nerd out collectively and do their own thing.
I think this is a hint that maybe you should have a baseball panel.
Baseball panel. Well, it's funny because I probably shouldn't say this, but one of the cool builders who's going to be there is sort of the legendary underground Luthery hero Wayne Henderson, who was the subject of a book called Clapton's Guitar that came out a while ago. Great book. And Wayne famously needs to kind of be bribed to get a guitar. And we bribed him to coming to the Fretboard Summit with his amazing daughter, Elizabeth Jane Henderson, by getting him a tour of Wrigley Field. So I'm not sure we can offer that to anyone else, but I am willing to bribe people to come to this thing.
This is great. You saw that, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks, Sambo.
Yes. So good. So good. What is this question, Tex? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Next.
What's going on with Tex tonight?
I don't know. It's like season. There's nothing. I have zero idea what he's.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
I'm over here just like looking at the family calendar, going, "What do I have going on in that last weekend in August? Can I sneak up to Chicago quick? I'm in Ohio. It's not far away. I'm like,
come up for the day. Do whatever you need to do.
But what if we filmed something around it, Gabe? We can.
I was gonna say we can make this a whole thing.
We can make this a whole thing.
I understand Gabe likes Chicago.
Apparently,
he may have mentioned it.
Yeah, apparently, and the guy from suburban Chicago.
Chicago.
He's not in the feed tonight. Where's Tobias?
Where is Tobias? He's usually here to troll me with Tigers scores, or Cubs scores rather.
Cubs scores. Come on, get your team right. I'm the guy who's going to troll you with Tiger scores.
Fair.
I beat you last week. Anyway, I think we got it. Okay, what, Gabe? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's a solid idea. And you're talking about all kinds of things that are near and dear to my heart. Recording the guitars, something I do literally every day. I could come up and pedals. We could nerd out on pedals, Jay.
Come on up. Okay.
I mean, maybe they will someday.
Maybe they will one day. They. Wait a second.
I'm not them.
Maybe they will.
Okay.
Have you guys ever gotten a product idea from this channel and people recommending anything? I'm sure you get lots of ideas.
Content ideas,
yeah.
We do get content ideas that are really fantastic, actually. Content ideas. I think this is a really great place. This is, Jason, as we wrap up the show, we're going to go into another segment called Mike's Question. Mike, do you have your question ready?
Oh, I have more than one.
Okay, and then we're going to go into a segment called 2 Minutes of Sports. This is where we talk about sports because I want to turn everything into a sports podcast. Okay. But we get a wonderful content ideas because this is such a loving group who show up all the time.
It's awesome.
And it's
it's a good way to source questions that need answered.
There is always 75 people on a Tuesday night that watch. Some of the shows are larger, but it's always locked in. There's always 75 people here, and most of the time they're the the same. It's a wonderful little community that we built, and we can't thank them enough. Because, Jason, I think I told you when we saw each other in New York, this was birthed out of a pandemic, right? We used to do this thing. We used to go live with this go live functionality in Zoom, so it would like have the big giant Zoom logo on the bottom, and then we're like, well, there's this other thing called StreamYard we could use. In the studio that I'm in right now, it's actually set up for a full live broadcast, and we're going to potentially eventually, move into that world. We have done 91 shows. We're almost at 100. 100 is going to be wild. We have a really good idea for that.
Good.
But this is just, it's a blast, man. It's a blast to hang out with these folks, but they come with the best questions and the best content ideas. And so a lot of our content that we've made, I want to say we started this whole series called Showdowns, where we would either showdown or compare or apples to apples guitars or different guitars and shapes and stuff like that. I think a lot of that we fine-tuned it a bit, but that idea came from here. It was wonderful. And that, I mean, we've done those little segments or video that we release are fantastic. What is this guy talking about?
Circa 1970.
When Taylor Guitars started, of course.
Yeah, he thinks that's the trivia answer.
Yeah, we haven't done
trivia
yet.
Yeah.
We haven't done Evan's question yet. Okay, so this is the answer to that.
Yeah. Oh wait, my eyebrow shouldn't be going like this, right? When we address that, we shouldn't.
Favorite show on
Phil.
YouTube.
Well, Phil, your deal is that you
got to watch the pedal show. It's better.
The pedal show is pretty darn good, man.
That is a good show.
It is a really, really, really good show. What? I love the fact that you see. I told you wanted. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Exactly.
And I appreciate that.
I appreciate that. We love it.
We love
look
talking
at this
about microphones and recording.
Sambo over here throwing up ideas.
Great content right there.
Great content idea right there.
Most expensive show ever.
It's the only time we get budgeted to give away it. All right. So the next segment we have real quick is called Mike's Question. This used to be called Sharpie's Question. I started a show with a guy named Sharpie, and he left and went and got into the brewery business, and then opted out of the brewery business and now works for Petco Corporate making content, which is rad for him. We love it.
Okay.
And then it became
I go work with him sometimes.
You do. And then it became Lindsay's question. Lindsay Love, she's on our artist relations team. You may or may not have met her before, but you should know her. She's fantastic.
Okay.
She's been involved with she also manages community relations for us. So she's extremely busy right now. She'll come back to the show.
It's going to be Roger's question, it sounds like.
I know. And now it's called Mike's Question. And this question has nothing to do with anything that we've been talking about probably. Okay. So Mike,
I have two, and the reason why there's two, is because one of them does have to do with what we're talking about. So I'm going to ask that one first. When you've interviewed, obviously you've interviewed tons and tons of artists, luthiers. Sometimes there's a different level of expectation depending on who you're interviewing. What I'd like to know is, and you could be honest about this because it's a positive ending, what interview did you go into with somewhat low expectations that wound up being such an amazing interview, it just blew you away?
Well, I think the first time I interviewed Ry Cooter, who is sort of a notoriously not easy interview, I would say. I was staying at a hotel with my wife and kid in Santa Monica, which is where Ry is based and where he keeps his guitars. And I remember my wife being like, when do you think you'll be back from this interview? It was like a 10 a.m. interview or whatever. And I was kind of like, I looked at her and I was like, I might be back in a half hour, or I might not be back until like 4. And I'm happy to say that for that one interview, I got Ry going and he started pulling guitars and banjos and mandolins out of cases. And, it was one of these scattershot interviews where we weren't looking at the clock. We weren't trying, there was no arc to the interview. It was just him being like a kid in a, candy store. Here, look at this thing, and we were kind of nerding out together. And we chatted for 3 hours or something. It was crazy. And so it was on the upper end of when I told my wife I would be back to the hotel. But yeah, that was one that super surprised me. You know, in terms of other like big names that I've interviewed, you know, I had a blast talking to Steve Martin about his banjo collection.
Love it.
And that was done down in LA. And that was another one where, you know, sometimes these publicists, you know, their job is to kind of protect their client. And, you know, the publicist, I think, said, now you have a half hour. And the minute I got him started on John Hartford and talking about, you know, all these, you know, he filled his car with banjos to show off. He's got this incredible collection. And so the minute he starts talking about that and working at Disneyland and David Lindley and all this stuff, you know, we were off to the races. We had a great like hour, 90-minute long chat. And I could see the publicist was kind of like, why is he talking so much? You know, but Steve liked it because I actually wanted to hear his banjo stories. So yeah.
Nice.
Those are the best ones. Yeah.
Now my other question is stupid.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, there's no such thing as a stupid question. There's good ones and great ones.
Good ones and great ones.
This one's a good one.
Good questions, great questions, and stupid people who ask them. So you see this pointy guy right here? I'm trying.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, I see it.
Now, you deal mainly with luthiers of acoustic instruments and things of that nature. But
50-50. But yeah.
But if you were to buy a shredder guitar, if you were going to have one in your collection,
okay,
which one would you have?
Oh man. Okay. So we are trying to do a better job of including electric coverage in the Fretboard Journal. Let me just say that. And I'm not saying that to piss off the acoustic purists, but we actually did 2 electric guitar annuals. These were like, you know, a book of just electric guitar coverage from us. And I kind of thought like, oh, this will be great. It'll get us some new advertisers. It'll be, you know, for the electric fans who want it, it's there. If you don't want it, you don't have to buy it. And after doing 2 of those, which were a ton of work and didn't necessarily result in the big electric brands, you know, clamoring to give us money or anything, it was sort of like, why don't we just make every issue of the Fretboard Journal a little bit more, you know, diverse on that front. So anyways, through all of that, I've met some great electric builders. I love it when I have a connection with the builder. So I probably wouldn't just go to Guitar Center and buy something off the wall. I probably would go buy a Sully guitar from John Sullivan, who's based near Houston, who makes pointy guitars that are played by a lot of shredders. And John has been on our podcast and has a heart of gold and is just an awesome human being. And I would want that in my stable. So
I think you just sold him 4 more guitars with that.
That'd be cool. I mean, he's a great guy. He deserves it. Yeah. There's a whole bunch.
Do you know Ken Haas from Reverend?
I know Reverend, but yeah, I don't know Ken. Yeah.
You should get to know Ken. He would be a good person to talk to. He's a pretty wild guy. He plays in Jay Navarro and the Traders, and
yeah,
he's a pretty interesting conversation. I think you'd have a lot of fun talking to him.
I would love that. Yeah, make that happen.
I'm just looking up Sully guitars right now, and now I want one.
Right? Yeah, he just posted one like a week ago that was like inspired and aged to look like a 70s Camaro, which is like the last car in the world I would ever want in my driveway. But I looked at this guitar and I'm like, oh my God, that guitar is so cool. Like it looked kind of like the hood of I think it was a Camaro. It was like that matte black too. It was really cool.
Got it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's
Thank
awesome. All right, it's time. 2 minutes of sports. Do you have a sport favorite? I'm not going to roll a useless clip. Do you have a sports? Do you have a sport that you love, Jason, or a sport that you hate? Are you a sports guy? Do you care?
I will say, like probably a lot of residents of Seattle right now, I'm not for this because I'm on this podcast with you guys, but I'm kind of glued to the Kraken game. The games, our NHL team is doing rather well, and they're playing right now. So I haven't looked to see what the score is or anything. But
do you want us to spoil alert you?
Sure.
Does anyone want to give a Kraken score in the feed?
Yeah. Somebody's probably got a couple windows open, has that going. But I love the Seahawks. I guess
end of the first. It's 1-0 Dallas.
Okay. I love the Seahawks. I'm rooting for the Kraken, and sports not really, I not organized sports. Like I was never that kid. I was always the loner kid. So I love skiing. I love solitary pursuits. Like that's my jam, is to go drop my kid off at school and go ski midweek for like 3 hours and then pick him up when he's done with 6th grade.
So I can tell you the story. We had a really fun time. Jason and I got to sit with Bob in New York when we were there for a while, and it was Bob just talking. I mean, and when you get that time with Bob, it was like Mike and I told the same story on the podcast on Primetime when we were talking about how we got to drive him to JFK the next night, right? And it was just like when you get the opportunity to sit with Bob.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting with Bob once, and I'm like, Bob, come on, man, it's like sports, and I can't remember what the deal was, and he looked at me and he was just like, and he was doing this, and he was like. And so what he was doing is he was deleting full photos that he didn't need on his phone. Right. And he was just like this. And he kind of looks up at me, from his phone. He kind of looks up and he goes, Jay, I don't care about sports. And that was it.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, but your cousin is Phil Jackson, man. Like, don't you? Nothing? No basketball, nothing? He's like, no, don't care. Don't care. Anyway, I love it. Anyway, I love all people who don't like sports too. It's okay. My mom and I are glued. Yes.
One thing Jason mentioned was, you mentioned, not being into organized sports. I kept thinking, what would be the disorganized sports?
I know.
Like full contact baseball.
What is disorganized sports?
Like just
tackle
with
badminton.
No rules.
I meant to say team sports, but
I want to see like tackle football, but with no rules.
No rules.
Yeah, exactly.
6 teams on the field. Yeah.
That's rugby, yeah. Australian rules football, basically.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up at 1 hour and 45 minutes and 34 seconds. Jason Verlinde from Fretboard Journal, becoming a guitar nerd. You're still a nerd, man.
All right.
You're a nerd. You're smarter than all of us on this podcast. That's for sure.
That's
you
not
at least
high
know
bar.
how to write. It's not a high bar, but it's at least you know how words go on paper. That's really exciting. No, ladies and gentlemen, really check out Fretboard Journal.
We appreciate you. It's an absolutely outstanding magazine.
Thank you guys so much.
Wonderful.
It's a ton of work. The amount of time and effort that they put into making curating good stories and the read.
Really great content. Like
all of the content is good, and don't add QR codes. It's okay, man. You don't need to do that. It's just leave it as is and keep doing what you can do, and we will champion it as much as we possibly can.
I appreciate it.
This is a plug for Fretboard Journal. It is a fantastic quarterly magazine, right?
Yeah.
And
like
it is
the slow food movement versus fast food sometimes.
I'm
disorganized sports.
I'm low key filling out the subscription right now.
Aw.
There you go.
Thank
So if you have a little extra, throw up those subscription dollars. We need to keep these print magazines alive, and this one's so great. You're gonna find such great information and great stories. It's unbelievable. And Jason, keep the podcasts, man. Keep them coming. I mean, I absolutely love. Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I actually, Gabe, asked Jason if he would come and actually, like, we get the question all the time to relaunch From the Factory podcast, and the reason we quit From the Factory podcast is a pandemic, and we couldn't figure out how to do it the right way. We had, I think the last episode was Kevin Bacon, and and it's like on YouTube somewhere, and it was totally mediocre, and it was like we were mediocre. We didn't know what
I
we were
wasn't
doing.
on it.
You weren't on it, right? That's why.
Now you got the 0 degree of separation. Like, that's kind of a life goal.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I was
everybody.
at 1 before.
You're welcome, everybody. You all know now you're 1 degree closer to Kevin Bacon. Anyway, I said that, I think, at one point. I called my mom afterwards, and I was like, "You're welcome, Mom. You're 1 degree closer." Anyway, we're thinking about bringing the From the Factory podcast back, but it's a lot of work, and we got to figure out how that works and how we could do stuff like that. But Gabe, so I asked Jason, I was like, we should do the podcast. That would be cool. And then we should do the podcast. We could just, this primetime thing could just become From the Factory too. And then it would just be 2 podcasts that are totally the same, and that would not work. That's my rant.
All right.
So, ladies and
I'll come
gentlemen.
down to San Diego anytime you want.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
down. I'm down anytime.
All right.
I mean, I'm not coming to San Diego, but
We'll figure out how to
You like
do
Chicago.
We'll figure out how to do this podcast again for all of you who ask. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you guys. This was so much fun.
Bill, he's my guy right there. Bill, Eric, thanks for hanging out with us. Thank you guys. It's been a fantastic show. You guys are great. From the Factory podcast is great format. Bring it back.
I agree.
Cameron left. I don't have a co-host, so I gotta reach out to these guys. Maybe they'll co-host
let's
with
do
me.
it.
All right, everybody.
do
We
it.
appreciate you guys so much. We'll see. I believe we have a show next week. We might not have a show next week, Mom. Sorry. We might not have a show next week, Mom, but I'll let you know. I'll call you later, Mom, okay? We'll let you know. Guys, it's
Roger
been great
is
to hang
sad
out with
about
you.
that.
I know
Roger's all upset.
Roger's like,
bummed out.
hey,
Mike, are you in town next week?
Yeah,
Oh, we could have a show.
we could.
Oh,
I got ideas. We'll talk.
okay. We'll have a show maybe. All right. Thanks, guys, for watching. Thanks for
Bye.
hanging out. Jason, you're the best. Gabe,
Thanks for the invite.
maybe.
I'm okay.
All right. We'll see you next time, everybody. Have a good night.
See you, nerds.
Night.